cheatable. It's good enough for a house. You'll get thrown out of Sibsy if you try to use it on an office building or something. But it's good. It's good enough as a rule of thumb for daylight in my experience.
If you're not scared of learning software, there's free good daylight like Dialux, Evo, and Velux. I always bloody crashes on my when I try to do it. Dialux,
D-I-A-L-U-X,
and it's Evo now. Dialux Evo only works on a PC. You can't even run it on an emulator on a Mac. And there's also Velux Daylight Visualizer, which is free. Very clunky. It does some impressive stuff if you can get it to work, and it'll do roof windows obviously quite easily. Have a play, and it will do daylight plots and percentage daylight factor, but it's a bit of a learning curve, I found. But it's free. But yeah, it's simple spreadsheet stuff. Use the formula. And make a little spreadsheet up so you can put each window in. And also the rule of thumb, back to our rule of thumb of the rough percentage of window over the whole building. As long as you put it in sensible places, it will be another double check that you're roughly in the right.
Yeah, the other daylighting one is the old rule of thumb of the daylight goes 2.5 times, or twice the height of the window. And then if you've got double size, then it goes 2.5 times on each side because it picks up a little bit in the middle. So there's some simple rules of thumb.
Some rooms are hard to daylight; they're very deep, and so there's a whole.
Oh, was it the depth of the room 2.5 times?
Twice the head of the window.
Tea break, So for tea break, just because we've got case studies and we want you to have time for more questions. I think the tea's out. Are people happy getting a tea, have a wee or anything, and then bring your coffee back in? Sorry? And a cookie, But have a wee, bring your stuff back in, and just so we don't rush at the end. And that's all right. No, but it just does what low G does. It says the retrofit helps, but it will cut the daylight out as well.
It's the
same issue.
I just use the daylight factor from the code. Well, I actually quote it from the BS now, since I always ever did, because the code was shit. But cookies.
Is that the one that does the air quality as well? Yeah, Pete's used it down there.
I'm going to break. I was trying to get one with just the chocolate, but I was going to break all of them to get the chocolate one, so I had to rule that out.
What did you say there Mark, about the Louis coating? Did you say?
Me and Danny Harvey.
Because whenever Crest was built, there was a window put in, but it was a small enough piece with the framing all around it, and the internal glass shattered. And what was that? That was supposed to be a certified window from Munster, China.
I'm sure it was, yeah.
But what was that? Would that have been the Louis coating?
It could have been, yeah. We don't know more about that, but if it depended on the position of the Louis coating on the glass, if it was put on if the Louis coating was on the middle pane, then you get higher temperatures, and that's why it would have shattered, unless it was heat treated glass, toughened glass.
That happened, it was replaced, and never happened since.
Yeah. Because it might not still be a passive house.
No, especially when Munster China.
Something that'll log it so you don't lose it is quite useful, but it's very funny with buildings. It's very useful to see that.
Good to hear, unfortunately, should we say?
It's a bit this or it's a bit, and you can look and see. All right, it's slowly warmed up each day. Have you been venting at night, or you can immediately see the difference.
What? No, but it's not got over the water. For a moment, tea break.
This was very, very good. Very good.
Good. You're a passive house background, or?
Oh yeah.
No.
So I'm doing the whole PhDs in it.
10% is our acceptable threshold in the oldie worldy kind of passive houseness. Anything more than that is somewhat problematic. Over 15% is catastrophic, and we'd like to be in this sort of 0 to 2% where possible. So some early lessons. Early lessons. Oh, there we go. Slow photograph. I know why. Yeah, a bit too much data on this slide. I'll just talk while it slowly works its way up to I've,
Come on.
get the image on here. Note to self.
There you go.
Yeah, this is kind of from the Excel file, so it's got too many data points in it. Well, basically, this is Racecourse, which was the first passive house project I worked on. 28 houses, 25. Get that back. 20. Oh, I've pressed the button too many times in my impatience. So basically, the situation was with that was that you remember that S profile that we looked at earlier on, and we were seeing what was try and get a bit of this one. What we had was a situation whereby the house, this house on the end actually, there we are, goes over 25 degrees Celsius for 50% of the year. What on earth is going on?
Did you put more insulation on?
PHPP said 10%. Yeah, I'm reassured by our certifier when he was at BRE. So it should have been fine. It was, we weren't expecting any issues at all. Why did this problem arise? Well, basically, the best information that we can have is that it's down to misinformation in some form or another. Partly on the part of our design assumptions. I can remember one of the things that I don't normally kind of get wrapped into, but I can remember we actually increased the width of the glazing because we were getting, we were kind of falling outside the threshold a little bit, so with some extra solar gains would help, and we could just remain within the 10%. So gaining, sort of like gaining to get the 10% is a bad place to start, and wouldn't do that one again. But the biggest issue is the one that this is in what historically has been a tough neighbourhood. It looks very pretty now, but it's a tough neighbourhood. So people's concerns about crime and security, big issue. You've got people's bedrooms are on the ground floor, so therefore they might feel more insecure at night when they're in bed. So therefore they've not been opening the windows, they've not been doing the night purging, very naughty. Then the other thing is that the tenant liaison group, we were very careful. We were good passive house designers, so we had some workshops with everybody from the social housing provider who said, you can open the windows. Of course, that gets interpreted as, you can't open the windows. And we were saying, well, you can open the windows in the summer whenever you want, but to minimise your bills, you should keep them shut in the winter. Yeah. That turns into you can't open the windows. So therefore, there was this kind of understanding of language. So my recommendation now is don't talk about it. It's a house. Open the windows, close the windows. It's the same as any other house.
Do you not find that the perception of the majority of people in the UK, this is what I find with the majority of the new clients that come to us, is that the whole myth of passive housing is you can't open the windows in a passive house. Yeah. That's what.
No, but this is the one. I think we're stoking the myth by saying you can't open the window. You can open the windows. Makes it kind of it flips the conversation somehow. Because we're making a conversation out of a non-conversation for normal people. Yeah, no, but I think it's been a self-stoked conversation,
right,
and we're now trying to manage. We're in damage mitigation kind of territory.
Right, okay, so you said don't talk about it.
Yeah, so it's not to try and raise it unless they raise it as a question. Then obviously you would confront it, but if otherwise it's just a house. So don't make it, but don't make a mountain out of a molehill.
Is it not possible to just take the eaves a little further over?
Well, the eaves were out 600 millimetres already, and we didn't. So we already had some decent, what we felt at the time was decent shading in there. We've got 2.1 metre high sections of glass, which we were needing to get all of our solar gains and to tick the passive house box, so to speak, and things. We were getting PHPP said 6%. The other things that are not in here, this was an older version of PHPP, so the solar hot water cylinder wasn't included, etc., etc. Times have moved on. I'm not trying to get wrapped up into that old conversation. We've got new, better versions of PHPP. So lessons learned, and that all fed forwards. Now, what we got to here was overall summer satisfaction. So this is from a building use studies survey. People reporting that they felt it was in 2013 kind of a bit on the uncomfortable, kind of too hot side. But in 2014, things were perceptions were different. Okay, so people's attitudes of mind had changed as much as anything.
What was the weather very different?
Well, there's some other questions we haven't got the data, unfortunately, to be able to absolutely clarify.
Was
That-
it the same tenants though?
Yeah. So,
You
so
look at heating degree hours for the year for that location from the Met Office, and it would give you a rough indication of
yeah. We could go back all sorts of stuff, but we haven't done at this point. But it's the one whereby perceptions did change over time. Part of it we think is just that people got used to it to some extent. Yeah, because it's also the one of a hot house, relatively speaking. But we still know by PHBP calcs that we're 50%. So that wasn't a happy place. We've got Lancaster co-housing, so that's 41 owner-occupied homes. Cavity wall construction, except for on the south facade, which is timber frame. And the reason it was such large areas the reason it was timber frame was because of the large areas of glazing.
Not timber frame, it's masonry.
Yeah, on the south facade it was.
There's one bit of wood in there, but it's mostly.
Right, I understood it was south facade. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Fine.
that's all right.
Yeah, I know it was predominantly cavity wall. So it was ticking a lot of the boxes. There we go, window area, 20%, 28% of the treated floor area, so a little bit on the higher side. Night ventilation is used. People seem fairly happy. It's down to attitudes of minds and how people have approached it.
This looks onto a river. The River Loon is just to
Yeah,
the right,
just over-
and the other side
pardon.
is just a private road that only comes
Yeah.
to this and
So
other
that's
houses. So
a
it's
little
very
river there. The back it's a little footpath that leads up the back.
parking
I'm guessing
beyond.
perceptions are different in this instance though, because people were vested in developing it.
Yeah.
There must be some sort of.
Yeah, but it does.
And it's a nice area. There's not a lot around it. Security issues aren't the same. And this is the thing about that contextual set of relationships as well. So a lot of which.
Is that why the people seem happy? Because of the context rather than how?
It actually works. I mean, this one, yeah. We've got actually. So here's some temperatures. This is in. We've got a couple of shots of the living room and the outside temperature.
Yes.
This is again July.
That's living room.
So
there.
it's kind of went over 25 for a few seconds in the living room. But they are working this, as it said in the thing before, there's a bit more glass than we might have done because partly trying to hit the 15 kilowatt hours, and they're quite small flats, so the gains are actually very high because they are smaller than, decided because they have a lot of shared communal spaces. So they've got, there's guest rooms and there's storage and workshops, so the actual flats are quite compact. So the internal gains will be relatively higher. But it works, they do actually, it's not just that people are bought into it. There are also some very fussy buggers who will complain, but it does actually work. But I think the next one comes up, you can see.
Yeah.
So there's a bit, this is what happens when you go away, of course, this is October, but of course if you go away you're not night venting. But really, always the assumption was you would night vent, it isn't a problem. As I say, you've got the sound of the river, it's really nice having the windows open. So it does actually work in this situation. So this is a slightly simplified version of the passive house one. We're kind of saying, this is coming from our line, we're saying, look, less than 1%, again, depending on the assumptions, less than 1% fine, 5% okay for some, not others. So Ruth's, with the right assumptions, it might be in that kind of thing. Lancaster probably between the two. And then this one, too hot and hard to make comfortable. So we'd say, and that depends on these assumptions, which is partly on the ones we've given you on the handout. But we'll apply this to the case study. So I'd say Lancaster. So what would you say for race courses? That's probably...
Oh, well,
towards the hot.
race course is off the top. Yeah, we're 50% on measurement. So it's not a great place to be. But it's really thinking about why that was, and a lot of it's down to not necessarily the function of the physics. It's the assumption behind how it was going to be used and different other perceptions. So it's thinking more like an anthropologist than an architect is basically how I'd describe it.
And that race...
Sorry, were there any retrofits ever done at race courses to try and
I've done other retrofits on the sites, but I haven't got the same data.
to fix it, no. But they've kind of got used to
Oh,
it.
right,
They kind of-
retrofit those buildings. No, people have got used to it. Yeah, and
Opening the windows a bit.
Yeah.
yeah.
But a lot of these examples were very early in the UK. So Racecourse was one of the first passive house developments. Mark was working on it as we were doing the course. Occasionally he was running off and working on some details as we were doing the first ever English passive house course in Britain. So it was a very early, and they're small buildings. So again, a lot of the UK examples, very small. So this internal heat gains thing, big issue. The Germans didn't know what we were going on about because they've got 200 square metre, 150 square metre. Even the fairly cheap stuff tends to be more generous. So we were having these specific UK problems and not having the culture of external blinds and so on. So it's not like we were stupid, it's we were having to work out stuff that the Germans hadn't had to do, and with
Yeah.
ditching them and so on.
Yeah.
We kind of learnt, so there's a lot of lessons from the early models. It's not like we weren't listening to the Germans, we had a very different situation. But now we're kind of
But
leading.
I don't think we weren't, at that time, achieving 15 was hard, if you know what I mean. And the overheating was, well, we'll manage that, and we're getting the percentages and we're about right. Now, it's, the overheating's the hard bit, and 15's dead easy. But that's only comes from the information and the lessons learned and having the case studies to be able to get that information. So yeah, it's an evolutionary thing. So which goes back to the whole one of the triad, and looking at those different trade-offs about what we can do, whether it's the lack of design constraints, low user input, or low cost. It's something's got to give somewhere to one degree or another.
So his first examples, we're calling him happy compromise. So there's an Eames quote where he said, I'm not aware of ever having had any compromise, but I've had lots of constraints. So these are compromises, okay? They're happy compromises. We'll explain why. So you may have, we'll show the first example. So some of you have seen Denby Dale visited in Yorkshire. So again, very early example. Very early example. And they'd kind of seen a house in Stroud with a full height sun space, and they thought, we want a house, I want an eco house. They went to the Green Building Store, and Chris there said, look, passive house we've just been to the conference, I think you should look at this is really good. So I said, great, fine, So then they started sketching up ideas for the architect, and it had this sort of full height, we said, you can't have a full height conservatory, it's going to get hot in summer, cold in winter. With the client, it was a bit of a, and we were finding a feet, and everyone was finding the feet. There was a hold up with the planning. They meanwhile went to Austria to have a look at some of these passive houses, and it was snowing outside, and they were sat inside right by a triple glazed window, and they thought, wow, this is amazing. It's not a conservatory, but this is the living room, this is fine. So they came back reinvigorated. So they ended up with, this is south, that's west. So they've got a double height, full height glazing, but it's in the living space. So it's not a conservatory, it's not a sun space. So it's kind of a compromise. They didn't have that bit, but they've got this, and to make it work, you can see the external shading. So that's, in terms of our triangle, there's a cost in that. They've got Jeff, if he's going out and there's going to be a storm, he's got to fill the sails, otherwise he'll come back and it'll be trashed. So it's like having a sailing dinghy. You've got to look at the weather and notice that. So if it's going to be windy and sunny, you've probably got to stay in and, manually, reef the rigging or whatever. So, they're very happy with the house. You'd have to ask him whether he'd done it slightly differently next time, but they're not regretting it. So this is kind of a happy compromise. They've got what they wanted. They paid a price in terms of...
Yeah, they've had to learn how to live with the house a little bit. So they they do the nighttime purging and things like that, but they're happy to have done that. But that's okay because it's been negotiated. But for somebody else that moves into there, they're having to buy into those set of constraints that are predetermined. So it's very bespoke.
And they were warned,
very much for these
told,
people.
It'll work if you do this, but we'd suggest you don't. They said it's what we want, it's our house. So it's kind of, and they're still friendly with the builder, and it's all good. So that's an example of here's the results. Yeah, it works.
It works kind of both from a heating perspective and from a overheating or summer comfort perspective as well. It's all been very, very happily achieved.
This is a project I'm working with friend Charles Grills, which is kind of slightly true. This is one of the reasons we won't circulate the PowerPoints. It's our own project, but the client was very fixed on this view to the north. You think, great, north, not a problem, loads of heat loss, but it won't overheat, okay, you'd imagine. Surprisingly, when you get that amount of glass on the north, he did the renders in Adelaide just so that, because if you do it in Herefordshire or Monmouthshire, this just looks grim and dark and shadow, which is the reality. And we've tried to tell them that, but again, it's the client's always right, and we've done this thing, we've put in writing, look, we don't recommend you do this, it's... But we've got so in terms of, I think with 30% of TFA, the windows, so we're saying in terms of a little list, 25% kind of lit. It's a bit on the high side. Solar aperture, 0.08. We said 0.06 was kind of, we want to try and keep under that. Night vent, now we're assuming 0.2 air changes, which is beyond, we were saying that's a bit unrealistic, but you can do it. We've said, look, you're going to have to open these sliders. You're going to have to open the bedroom windows. Yeah, fine. You're going to have to put some fly mesh up because there will be flies in Herefordshire in summer, and we've spelt that out, we've put it in writing, and we've told them, and we've said, and again, it's not a passive house here, and we can't put shading here because that's the north, okay? In Adelaide it works, but in unfortunately the view is in Monmouthshire. So, you know, we've kind of had, so this is an example of having a discussion, whether we've been vigorous enough explaining it, but it's kind of, it does kind of work. So daily swing is okay, 2.5k. Summer bypass, we're taking a third of an air change, and we're getting 9% overheating. If we put 0.1 air changes per k, natural vent, that's wrong, then it should be 3%. But we're saying it'll be more than that, but we've done a little bit of a test, and it'll kind of work, and it's very hard to be much more robust, because they'll probably say, well, we told you it would be fine. It's not going to be disastrous, but it's a bit on the edge of, you know, I wouldn't sort of just let anyone live in this and say it'll be fine, but it's not disastrous. But this is, most of the glass is on the north side. And the next one, Mark, should come up with
just one thing, yeah, that's being my bonnet at the moment is the way that we went when you've got the sliding glass doors. It's like, how do you ventilate that? Yeah, it becomes quite a hard one to control
So these are sliding,
from an occupant's point of view.
You can.
Yeah, but it's
The client was
They're
very
not
specific about
straightforward.
exactly what stores they liked, the looks of them didn't, and so
So
on.
you have
So.
restrictor, so people can't come in,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah. But it opens up that whole debate about how do you do it, where do you do it, security. You get lots of air tumbling in and causing drafts and discomfort that might not otherwise be the case in certain scenarios. It's just opens up a mesh of things.
Do,
I was just going to ask, the daily swing 2.5 figure, where do you find that on PHP?
it's in the summer sheet. As I say, it's two things. It's partly just as a,
At the
it's a-
bottom,
it's originally intended as a test that if it's beyond that, then the model, because it's a static model, not dynamic, it says it's not.
Oh, and
Don't
so
trust the
daily
model.
temperature stroke, I've got
Yeah,
that.
so that's to do with the gains really.
Brilliant.
But it also tells us that it's probably going to be a bit of a comfort problem as well. It's telling us two things: the accuracy of the model, and it's kind of warning. It's one of the alarm bells for us. So this is kind of, you think. So here is this glazing by orientation. So south we got the north is as much as the south, a bit more, 27%. So we've got a load of north glazing because of the shape of the house. Now it's fine on the annual energy, but in terms of the transmission, so this is the transmission losses, and then the next one. So this is where the heating, the cooling load. So again, this is a graph that isn't in PHPP, but because it's a spreadsheet, you can hack it. The cooling load figures, or you can do it in kilowatt hours. So the north is significant. It's, you know, it's over half of what the south is. South you're expecting to be part of the heat gains. But the north, which you wouldn't think was a problem, is actually a significant part of the cooling load and not a useful part of the winter heat gains. So counterintuitive. It's partly the afternoon sun does come round, but it's also just the bright sky. There is solar gain in summer, even from the north. And if you've got a lot of glass, it will contribute. And same with north skylights. Well, much worse with north skylights, because again, people say, oh, it's north, it'll be fine. Afternoon sun in summer will come over. So if you put a big skylight on the north, it will cook you. And people, it's a hard one to convince people. PHPP does the sums and will tell you that. But again, it's one of those things. Intuitively, sat in winter design, you think, oh, I have a nice big north skylight. Don't have to worry about overheating. It's okay on the PHPP for energy. And then you get to summer and it just pushes you over the edge with heat. Yeah? So they were the happy compromises. This is if you're willing to embrace the constraints. This is hence the Eames quote. And I'm lucky to find a picture of them constrained. So this one, typical looking passive house, I would say. This is in Crickhowell. This is the north elevation. The south, they were still cladding it. We've got to go and take some photos in a week or so, finish a self-build. But this is the street side. Looks very traditional. It's completely modern. These are certified passive windows from Green Building Store. Frameless lime render, green oak porch, but everything is super insulated, super airtight, 0.18 air changes and so on. And just everything works. The amount of south glass, I actually said they could have more. They didn't want too much. Nice simple window seat. Sorry, I haven't got the photos of the elevation. But it's kind of, there was no real compromise on anything. It just worked. They didn't want big windows on the north and the street side, but they wanted it to look quite traditional, so that it worked with the size of the glazing. Everything kind of worked. There was no, oh, we really want to have the glass, you know, big windows here, but it won't work. You know, there was no real compromise needed. It just kind of, and it's a lovely house. It's going to work really well. The views are to the south, so we've got the overhang on the south. Simple bit of fixed glass with the window seat and so on. So really nice and simple. Pretty confident this is going to, from the figures again, we don't know yet because you're not living in it. It's going to be moving it soon. 80% of TFA green, PHPP less than 5% with no night vent. And they could night vent because this is a quiet little back street in Krakow. So 0.1% overheating with 0.1 air change is fantastic. Solar aperture 0.04. So this is all from Alan's criteria, all looking really good. And early results. It's been nice. It's cool to work in there in the summer when the builders are working on it with power tools and stuff. But it's not cooking or anything. I'm confident from this that this is going to work. So again, you see this has sort of moved on from the original PHPP criteria. This one, I just always slightly nerve-wracking. If you just click the next one, next click. This is a sort of semi-self-build. Friend Mike Whitfield put the frame up to lock up, and then they're finishing off themselves. And they hadn't done this shade over the south, which is like a porch thing, which was important. They've done that now, and I just rang them the other day. They got in touch about, oh shit, is it over? It's this hot, we're just in the middle, at the end of that hot spell. Oh Nick, I've just got a couple of questions. Oh shit. And it was about, I can't remember what it was about, it was nothing to do with comfort. Oh, it's been really comfortable, it's fine. We do need to open the windows in the evening. So we kind of say here, we're saying 22% of TFA is good. Solar aperture a little bit high, 0.07. It's kind of on the, we said 0.06. Less than 5% with 0.1. So they're doing, always the idea, this is down on a hill away from any roads. Windows not a problem. So again, this is kind of on our, it's okay, it's good, better than Ruth's, but you do need a bit of night vent in hot weather. And they did have some moths, and then a bat came in one night. So it wasn't the joyful wildlife experience they were thinking it might be, but yeah. This one, again, interesting, because this is the one that breaks all the rules. Well, not all the rules. So the constraint was, the architect said, look, this is a paragraph 55. This is just bare soil. It looks like Arizona, but it's green now. So the big architectural thing was sliding doors the whole length of the south facade, okay? That is the thing that's going to win paragraph 55 and get this built. But they've got the 1.5 metre overhang, good daylight, the view is stunning. It is a lovely view, and it is to the south, and it is brilliant. And very little north light. I had to get them to put extra windows in because I thought you want a bit of daylight at the back of the kitchen and so on. But again, from our 0.04 solar aperture, 1.2 K swing, this is heavy weight. So this is concrete and masonry, so it's load-bearing masonry, concrete planks on the roof. It's a seriously strong. The structure, one of the problems with slidey doors is there's nothing to hold the building up. So we've got internal walls that way, and the roof spans that way, so the structure all works very simply. So a lot of the things were really thought about. So it wasn't just I want everything. It was there was not trade-offs, but it didn't feel like a compromise again. It felt like constraints.
Where is that?
That's in near Cradley in Herefordshire. They've been in and we've got the date. So this is showing the overhang. So we just got this literally at the end of this spell. He sent me this last night. He sent it as Excel, but I couldn't get all the bits to line up, so it was done in a hurry. Kitchen, living. So you can see the daily, and this is the scale here. It's only 1K variation between night and day. High thermal mass, very small. We got into this sort of warm spell here, and it was starting to creep up. Not bad. So we started opening the windows more. And one of the things we do, so you can see it's gone warmer. So you've got more of a swing. But something that happens, although opening the windows in the daytime brings more warm air in, and the temperature, you can see there, the temperature goes up. It's gone up to just over 25. Because you're getting a warm breeze feels better than still at 23. At some temperature, you cross the threshold, you'd rather have the hot breeze than the still cooler. So that's it's a perception thing. But if you can keep the door shut when you're not in, that keeps the heat out. Keeps the building cooler, as you see here. This is the hot spell we just had, 22nd of June, and the temperature there at the top. That was the really hot bit. That was the recent heat wave. So their perception feels really cool, lovely, really happy. George, some of you know from Archetype, George Mikuchik. So again, we stuck this one in because he's just built this. He hasn't actually been moving in this weekend, but he's been in there. He's had a dehumidifier running, which is generating heat. Again, from our thing, we're saying 0% with no night vent, automatic summer bypass. It's got the same MVH hours, 2.6K swing, looking good, 0.05. So all looking good from these overheating criteria. And we haven't got data, 25% of TFA, all good. It's black, it doesn't matter, because it's all vented. And so that's not bad. This is a screen. So he's put flux. He was worried about summer comfort because it's straw bale, lightweight, black, big window, slidey door here. Good overhangs, but he's got these Czech or Slovak sun blinds, and these are actually insect mesh. He's just put them on a few strategic windows. I think there's the end one there, east and west facing, I think. So you can shut them, open the window, so you get the night vent, but it keeps the flies out and it keeps the sun out in the day. And he was getting 21 degrees in this recent heat wave. He's been purging, he's been doing his morning purge, as he said on Twitter, which he said was too much information. And it's, you know, it's working. But again, we're not surprised because we've got, you know, good figures. Architecturally, you know, didn't feel constrained. He was constrained by budget and various things.
You mentioned it's straw bale wall. Has it got extra insulation?
It's the Eco Cocon. It's this.
Wood fibre.
It's got wood fibre on the outside, and it's specially made up panels. Not straw bale, it's straw. So it's packed into.
Has he got over his? He's got these metal purlins.
No, not metal purlins. They're timber purlins.
They look very thin.
You can't really see them. They're 6x2s.
Okay.
Not purlins. They're 6x2 overhang bits.
Yeah, stumps. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought they were metal.
No. And it's all shugi. What is the burnt wood thing?
Yeah, the Japanese kind of
Hard work, but it looks lovely.
Don't remember what the fly screens were called.
No, if you contact George, he's just going.
Twitter, someone.
Yeah, go on to try him on Twitter. He's just heading off to Slovakia. It was Slovak, and again he bought his own windows and he went over to Slovakia, went to the factory. You can do all that if you don't mind driving around to Slovakia and you speak the language, and you can. But if it goes wrong, he's going to go back when he's visiting his parents. He can sort it. You don't really want to be. You might find some great bargains on the internet, but you've got to think. You know, if the thing breaks, can I repair it?
So he's favouring his wits with Brexit then.
George is Slovakian. We said, look, if immigration's a problem, you've got to be thrown out. So just email all your friends, get on Twitter. We'll be round there. We'll give you the biggest send-off you've ever imagined. So, no, very good friend. And the school. So this is the one we showed the graph of before. So this is Wilkinson. So again, lightweight construction. You saw the temperature graphs. Big overhangs here, which are what the kids play under. So that's really a sort of, that was a requirement of they're bigger than they look. It's foreshortened by the photo. They're sort of 2 metre. And the light comes over the top. So there's no transom, but you get the daylight view. So from inside, you don't, although these are fairly cheaply done, you can't actually see that from inside. It's kind of the angle, 15 degrees. It's almost invisible. But kids can play in here out of the rain, in and out. No glazing to the floor. Tilt windows for vent, side windows. Working really well. Windows rather than curtain walling. Cheaper than the other schools. Works better. Win-win. Again, constrained by budget and everything.
You can't beat a good view. I'm not talking about the sheep necessarily. So yeah, this is Steel Farm, which is up in County Durham. As you can see, this is the north facade. And you can see these relatively small, kind of more vertically oriented, traditional looking windows. It's in quite idyllic location, so no worries about security, no issues of that sort. There we go. So yeah, more data analysis, pulling it in. So south facade, we've got some higher areas of glazing. PHPP with MVHR on summer bypass, 0%. And at which point I thought, you're having a laugh. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So what's the reality? So I got some data logs and threw them in the house for 11 months as it was. And this is what we started to find out, that basically the house in the kitchen, living, dining area, which is down on the ground floor over here, goes above 25 degrees Celsius for 1.8% of the year. Bedroom number 3, which is this room here, went over 25 degrees Celsius for 4.6% of the year, but there was nobody in there to open the windows because it's an unoccupied room. The client's bedroom at the back of the house went over 21 degrees Celsius for 0.9% of the year. So that's a north facade. So all in all, a success. A very comfortable kind of place to live. So basically, there's a certain PHPP works, but it sort of it kind of assumes you're in an idyllic location. You know.
Is it quite windy there as well?
It's exposed, so it's not overly sheltered. But yeah, I think it's an exposed northeastern place, you know. Yeah.
Any flies on that?
Well, there are flies. You do get the little hay flies and things, but it's not causing any issues or anything like that.
External flies though?
No, well, Trevor's used to working. He's a farmer, so he's used to dealing with them outside anyway. So
Blinds, like
Blinds.
blinds.
yeah. Yeah, blinds. So you wouldn't need blinds on the eaves. Not that we've not got blinds because the flies. Yeah. No. We've not had to introduce anything. It's purely dealt with by the reveals, and with that bit of window opening that we know that happens in reality, but we didn't include within the PHPP. So yeah, it basically it works. So where we get to is that 150 odd square metres of treated floor area, 20 and whole dwelling kind of glazing area of 27% there, with a glass area of 15.3. So that sort of gives you another kind of rule of thumb. So you're seeing that how these kind of projects are where we're sticking into that sort of 25-ish territory actually seems to deliver a fairly kind of reliable performance in that respect. So as rules of thumb go, that's as good as you can get from an out with the gate start. So in terms of thinking about those kind of overall considerations and getting back around to a bit of a summary on this front. So glaze for daylight, not for and views, not for solar heating. Target window areas of less than 25% of the treated floor area, as per the rules of thumb guide that you can get from the Passive House How-to Passive House website. You've got the glass below 800 millimetres, below your table height, below your working plane is not really very useful. It only provides solar gains, you're not getting any more daylight. Do the numbers, your intuition will be wrong. So it's always that one of, look for the counterintuitive. Physics will tell you something different. Design for summer delight, not minimum targets. So the idea should be targeting 0% overheating, because that's what will make your clients happiest and most comfortable. And if you simply put it into the one whereby you're a consultant and you want more referrals, you want happy clients, not unhappy clients. So
that is a hard one, because we were saying earlier in the tea break that if you're having a design meeting in midwinter, you forget, like now you're not thinking about being cold in winter. It's like when you design your garden, you don't think of shade. If you think about sun traps in winter, and summer you think about shade. We kind of almost can't think 6 months ahead, and it is a thing, getting people to take this seriously when you're doing designs in winter. It's very hard if you're sat in an overheated office having a discussion, and everything will be small windows and loads of shading, and then you'll get to winter and you think, I wish we'd let more lighting. It's kind of, you've got to battle that. It's really hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got a project on site at the moment, and the client, I've been saying to the client, well, for all of this to work the way that you've wanted it, you're going to be going over your 25 degrees Celsius, and you need to be opening your windows for a couple of hours to make it all work. And they're like, 25 degrees? That'd be amazing, that'd be fantastic. It's like, well, we'll wait and see, But you try to keep them briefed and keep them in tune. So PHPP is to help you design, not to test, not to scrape through. Stress test your design. So look at several different design scenarios as you're going. You don't just sort of fix it down. Focus on what you want to do with the windows and think about what you're going to do from there. One of the things that I'd done at Steel Farm was actually looking at congregating all the glazing in one corner of the house, shall we say, or distributing it more evenly. The client preferred it to be more distributed because it had more of a traditional feel. In retrospect, that was definitely the right thing to do, because we have avoided a lot of localised overheating issues that could have arisen. So sometimes you don't need a PHPP to tell you that you just distribute the glass evenly and it'll be less of a problem. Prioritise unwanted gains.
Really clear, to really drive the gains down. Hot water, lighting, everything. And in offices and stuff, think computers, sensors. That's the thing to get really geeky, because it's not useful. It's always good to get them out. Very important. Yeah, and
really, the key thing I think is ventilation is good, but you can't always rely on it. And that's the key thing. That's where trying to use the MVHR is the only option. For design terms, reality can be different. But if you know that you designed it for that 0% overheating with MVHR, you know you're in a really good position, and the best position that you as a designer can actually pitch it into.
One thing was on the schools, the original assumption was, particularly because schools are bigger fans and more power, we specifically designed to run with window opening, turn the MVHR off in summer, so we had a separate fan for the loos. We really spent some effort to make it So in summer you turn it off and you do work window opening, you had automatic open clear storage. Complete disaster because they were miserable. You get summer suddenly go into miserable weather and it's a cold wind and the windows are all shut and the CO2 levels in the classrooms went up with the post-occupancy monitoring, stuffy conditions, really not good. So that now we just say, look, just leave it running, open the windows, summer, winter, do what you want. As Mark was saying, just, you know, if you want the windows open them, shut them, don't care. But the MVHR keeps going and you just forget about it. You're not having to think, is it winter or is it, how do you decide when it's summer in this country? I mean, it's really hard. Suddenly it's winter again and then it's summer, you know, it's, you can't program it.
It's still Wednesday.
So it just kind of, it's kind of got simpler really, some of this stuff and some of the earlier ideas, and it's just using very little energy really.
Yeah, so basically just try and keep it simple as possible. You know, the world can be a lot more complicated, but you keep your design and your design processes simple and straightforward. More info in the rules of thumb. So loads of
just because it's free doesn't mean it's
I've got
crap.
some little download cards. I'm more than happy to pass out. You can download it to the website.
That's in
It's a
case you
PDF
can't type
publication.
the rules of thumb into Google.
So, to conclude, as Sherlock Holmes would say, summer assumptions are much more critical than winter assumptions. So, you know, passive house is battened down, the physics kind of leads you towards a certain conclusion for 15. The thing with summer is that everything opens up. So it's actually trying to find ways to limit yourself down again so you've got a robust set of responses to design to. Assumptions and design decisions must be transparent because we need to make sure that the clients know what they're getting and the potential tenants or whatever else. And with good design constraints, are embraced. So you see them as an opportunity, don't see them as a threat. And the alternatives of compromise and failure to perform. Now, neither of those are necessarily what we want. One, because compromise just doesn't feel nice, and failure to perform is just not good. Doesn't lead you with that good professional feeling at the end of the day.
And happy compromise is just about tolerable.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. So thank you very much. Any questions?
All brain dead.
I'd just like to finish, so I'm trying to do that. I'd just like to thank Nick and Mark for an excellent presentation. Informative as always. If I could just ask you to fill out the evaluation forms and post the questionnaires. Again, it's just for our internal, it should be in your folders.
Two levels up
Again,
for that.
it's just for our internal review.